That afternoon, under the cold glare of recessed LED lights in the conference room, Jason slid the termination papers across the polished table toward me. His voice was sharp and unsettling. "Daniel, we need younger, hungrier talent. Your recent numbers just aren't meeting the company's new growth expectations." I sat there, unable to believe what I was hearing. Nearly 10 years with Westmore Financial in Denver, Colorado. 9 years as senior account executive. I had built a client portfolio that accounted for nearly 35% of the company's total revenue. No shortcuts. Just long flights, sleepless nights, and handshakes built on absolute trust. I kept calm, looking straight into Jason's eyes, searching for a sliver of empathy. "Jason, I've brought in over $10 million in revenue just last year alone. Do you really think this is the best way to say thank you?" Jason, the newly hired vice president of sales just 6 months ago, adjusted his designer suit and looked away. "We appreciate everything you've done, but the future requires new energy. The market's moving fast, Daniel. You understand." He hadn't even once accompanied me to a client meeting. 3 weeks into his tenure, Jason had unilaterally changed the commission structure, cutting my earnings by over 15%, even though my sales consistently exceeded targets. I didn't argue further. I stood up, doing my best to stay composed. "Thank you for the opportunity, Jason. I wish the company success with its new direction." Back at my office, I quietly packed 9 years of my career into a single cardboard box. A few family photos, a coffee mug my son had painted for my birthday, and a small notebook where I had kept client contact information separately. Just a habit. But today, more important than ever. As I stepped out of my office, Stella from accounting jumped up, surprised. "Daniel, where are you going? Are they moving you to another office?" I smiled lightly, masking the bitterness with a calm expression. "Something like that, Stella. See you around." On the elevator ride down to the parking garage, I ran into CEO Peter Matthews. He barely looked up from his phone. "Hey, Daniel, good work." I just smiled silently, realizing he had no idea Jason had just let go of the one person holding together a major part of the company's quarterly revenue. Walking out of the building, I felt no anger, just a strange clarity, as if waking from a beautiful but false dream. It was a place I once thought I belonged, until today. I drove home in silence. No music, no phone calls. Just deep in thought. As I pulled into my driveway, my phone buzzed with a new message. It was Jared Lawson, my biggest client, managing a hotel chain worth nearly $2 million a year for Westmore. Jared was confirming our dinner reservation next week to discuss renewing the contract. He had no idea yet. No one did. I set the phone down on the kitchen counter and stared out the window, thinking, Jason didn't just fire an employee today. He severed the only connection keeping millions of dollars flowing into Westmore. I had been with Westmore since it was still called Rocky Mountain Investments, a tiny company with just 10 employees in a cramped suburban office. Peter himself had recruited me from a competitor, looking for someone who understood the local market and could earn client trust. And he was right, at least for the first 7 years. I helped grow Westmore from a small $5 million operation into a Colorado powerhouse, pulling in nearly $30 million annually. My clients signed 3 to 5 year contracts because they trusted me. My wife Sarah often joked that I was married to my clients more than to her. Family dinners, when they happened at all, were usually cut short by calls from Jared or another executive. "Another Thursday night with the Lawsons?" she would ask, already knowing the answer. But now, all of that was over. A decade of loyalty and sacrifice erased in less than 20 minutes. I sat there, staring into the backyard, thinking about tomorrow. The first day in 9 years I'd wake up without Westmore. But deep down, I knew. Tomorrow would be a very interesting beginning. The truth was, I had sensed something wrong from the moment Jason walked through our doors. 6 months ago, when he was appointed VP of Sales, he'd brought a new breeze with him. But for me, it was a silent storm. In his first week, Jason organized an internal meeting without even inviting me. When I asked Linda, the office assistant, she awkwardly explained. They said you didn't need to attend. Probably a mix-up, Daniel. I didn't believe it, but decided not to make a fuss over one meeting. Still, days later, my desk was abruptly relocated to a cramped corner by the emergency exit. I told myself it was temporary due to office renovations, but deep down, I knew something was off. Each month, my commissions shrank, even though my sales figures kept growing. I confronted Jason once. He just shrugged and smiled coldly. We're reallocating resources, Daniel. Everyone has to make a little sacrifice. His little sacrifice meant almost a 15% cut in my monthly income. I left his office that day filled with unease, but forced myself to stay focused. Clients still flooded my personal phone. They insisted on speaking with me directly, no one else. But the clearest sign came just last week. After a major meeting with Jared Lawson, I was having lunch with a colleague when IT notified me they were checking my work computer on orders from upper management. I rushed back to find Mark, a young tech guy, nervously at my desk. I asked him straight, "Why are you checking my computer, Mark?" He avoided my gaze, mumbling, "Just a routine maintenance check, Danielle." "Routine maintenance during lunch hour without notice?" I pressed. Mark fumbled, packed up quickly, and left without another word. When I checked, several important client files were missing. Thankfully, I always kept backups for myself, so I didn't escalate the matter. The tension was relentless that week. I barely slept. Every morning I woke with a gnawing sense of dread. Sarah noticed, too. "Something going on at work, Daniel?" she asked, worry creasing her forehead. I brushed it off with a forced smile. "It's just work stress, honey, nothing serious." But today, holding the termination letter in my hand, I realized I had made a grave mistake by ignoring every warning sign. Sitting in the living room, sipping coffee, I stared at the cardboard box filled with 9 years of memories. My personal phone buzzed again. Jared Lawson. "Daniel, are you okay? I heard rumors you're no longer with Westmore?" I sighed and hit answer. "News sure travels fast." "Yes, Jared, I was just let go." "No way," Jared exclaimed, his voice full of shock. "You're the reason we signed with Westmore. Who could possibly replace you?" "Maybe Jason, or someone new. Honestly, I don't know," I replied, keeping my voice as steady as possible. Jared stayed silent for a long moment, then his tone hardened. "I'll be honest with you, Daniel, I don't like this one bit. They're disrespecting both you and me. There's more to this, isn't there?" "I'm not entirely sure, Jared, but it seems like Westmore is heading in a new direction, one where I no longer fit." Jared gave a dry laugh. "They'll regret this decision, Daniel. I'll be taking a hard look at our contract." Ending the call, I felt a wave of tension roll down my spine. Jason probably thought firing me would be as simple as cutting an extra expense, but he had no idea he'd just punched a gaping hole straight through the company's revenue stream. I took another sip of coffee, trying to steady myself, reminding myself, sometimes the worst moments are the ones that make way for something far greater. And I knew, without a doubt, Jason had made a massive mistake. But just how massive, time would soon reveal. Tomorrow, I would wake up with a new plan. A plan to take back what was mine. And this time, I wouldn't ignore the warning signs again. The next morning, for the first time in years, I woke up without the 5:30 a.m. alarm blaring. No urgent client calls demanding immediate attention, no looming pressure of monthly sales reports. But instead of feeling relieved, I felt hollow. Sitting at the kitchen table, I opened my personal laptop and clicked into a folder full of notes. Nearly 200 clients, big and small, that I had built relationships with over 9 years. Looking through the familiar names, memories flooded back. Every meeting, every contract, every late-night call from a client, thanking me for exceeding their expectations. I thought back to my very first day at Westmore, when it was still a tiny operation crammed into the second floor of an old building on the outskirts of Denver. Back then, Peter Matthews, the CEO himself, had recruited me straight from a major competitor. He said it bluntly, eyes steady with conviction. I need someone who knows how to build lasting relationships, Daniel. I believe you can do it. I never forgot that moment. Peter's belief in me drove me to throw myself into the work with relentless determination. In just 3 years, I helped take Westmore from barely $5 million in revenue to one of the most recognizable names in Colorado finance, topping over $20 million annually, and nearly half of that came from my personal clients. But the thing I was most proud of wasn't the numbers. It was the absolute trust clients placed in me. I remembered one cold winter night 6 years ago. Patrick Rivera, owner of the largest organic grocery chain in the region, called me in a panic at 11 p.m. "Daniel, we're in big trouble. I just got word the bank won't renew our loan." Without hesitation, I drove through the night to Patrick's house. We spent 3 hours brainstorming, making calls to every banking contact I had, until, by 6 a.m., we secured a favorable financial restructuring deal. Patrick never forgot that. From that day forward, he became one of my most loyal clients, signing deals worth hundreds of thousands of dollars with Westmore year after year. But he didn't sign because of Westmore. He signed because of me, Daniel Thompson. The story with Olivia Mitchell, the powerful real estate executive whose firm pulled in millions every quarter, was much the same. When I first approached Olivia, she wanted nothing to do with another financial guy. But persistence, genuine attention, and trust slowly broke down her walls, and within a year, Olivia became one of my top clients. A key part of Westmore's success. Stories like Patrick's and Olivia's repeated over and over across 9 years, from emerging tech startups to multi-generational family businesses. I'd built it all through trust and personal integrity, turning cold business transactions into deep, lasting partnerships. Westmore might have offered good financial services, but clients chose us over hundreds of competitors because of the personal commitment I put into every deal, every call, every meeting. They trusted me, and I never broke that trust. Now, the harsh reality hit me. I had spent nearly a decade building something I thought was mine, but it had never truly belonged to me. Westmore was just a name on a building. Clients came because of me, but I had no control over my own fate. I leaned back in my chair, letting the realization sink in. Why had I been so easy to replace in the new leadership's eyes? But that didn't matter anymore. What mattered was the undeniable truth Jason and Westmore's leadership would soon face. My clients weren't just numbers in a database. They were people who placed their trust in Daniel Thompson, the guy who always showed up when it counted. And I knew, soon enough, they would realize what had really happened. When they did, Jason wouldn't just have lost an employee, he would watch Westmore's foundation crumble right before his eyes. With a deep, renewed clarity, I closed the laptop and stood up. This wasn't the end of my story. It was just the beginning of a brand new chapter, and this time, no one else would be writing it but me. I sat in my small home office, morning sunlight slanting through the window, illuminating the cardboard box of belongings from Westmore. Carefully, I unpacked each item. Family photos, the Employee of the Year 2019 trophy, and finally an old leather-bound notebook, filled with the names, numbers, and tiny details of the relationships that had become the lifeblood of my career. Each name, each number brought back memories. Jared Lawson, hotel chain CEO. Olivia Mitchell, real estate queen. Patrick Rivera, organic food magnate. They weren't just clients. They were friends, allies who stood beside me through the toughest deals. One thing was clear as day: these relationships didn't belong to Westmore. They belonged to Daniel Thompson. My personal phone, not the company's, held the full record. Every casual text, every serious financial conversation, every lunch meeting, every late-night golf outing. A network money couldn't buy. I poured myself a fresh cup of coffee and sat in silence, staring at my phone. The calm surface barely concealed the storm brewing underneath. I needed to act, but not recklessly. My plan was simple. No shouting, no lawsuits, no frantic emails demanding justice. I would do what I knew best, let the relationships speak for themselves. I started with 3 phone calls. The first was to Jared Lawson. When he answered, I kept it brief. Jared, just wanted you to hear it from me directly. I'm no longer with Westmore. There was a pause, heavy and loaded, before Jared spoke. His voice weighed down. Are they crazy? Who's going to handle us now? I'm not sure. Maybe Jason will assign someone new. A heavy sigh came through the line. Daniel, if Westmore can't hold on to you, how are they going to hold on to their clients? We work with you, not some name on a building. The second call was to Olivia Mitchell. When she heard the news, she let out a cold laugh. I guess I won't be renewing my contract with them next month. Let me know when you've landed somewhere, okay? The third call was to Patrick Rivera, and his response was even more decisive. Wherever you go, that's where we'll be. I didn't have to promise anything. I didn't have to beg, just clear information. The rest, they decided on their own. That entire afternoon, my phone rang nonstop. Word of my departure from Westmore spread across the industry like a wildfire in the middle of a dry summer. It didn't take long. In Denver's finance world, information moved faster than any official news outlet ever could. By that evening, I was receiving messages from old contacts, bank partners, insurance firms, even small businesses I'd helped when they were just starting out. Everyone asked the same thing. Where are you heading next? I didn't have a clear answer for them yet, but deep inside an idea was already forming. If I could carry their trust with me out of Westmore, why not use that very trust to build something truly mine? As night fell, I opened my old leather notebook, flipping through the worn pages. Every name, every number, was a reminder of the long years I had poured into this career. It wasn't just work. It was commitment, sacrifice, and countless moments of choosing my clients over my own family. Outside the window, the Denver skyline glowed, the city lights pulsing like veins through a giant living body. I knew one thing for sure. If I stood still, if I accepted this defeat, nearly a decade of hard work would become nothing more than a fading memory. And that was something I could not allow. I closed the notebook, and for the first time in days, a real smile tugged at my lips. Not the bitter smile of someone discarded, but the calculated smile of someone who knew he still held many powerful cards. Tomorrow, I would start writing my story all over again, no longer under the shadow of a company that valued numbers over people, no longer letting anyone else define my worth. Just me, the relationships I had built, and a new world waiting beyond the horizon. The next morning, I decided to spend my time at a small coffee shop on the corner, a place I always went when I needed to think clearly. With a steaming black coffee in front of me, I opened my laptop and reviewed every note, every message from the clients I had carefully saved over the years. My instincts told me there was more to Jason's decision to push me out than simply refreshing the sales team, like he claimed. Something deeper was at play, something I hadn't yet seen. While sifting through emails, I stumbled across a message Jared Lawson had sent 2 weeks earlier. Daniel, they introduced someone named Scott Hamill from Viridian Group at our quarterly meeting. He said he's a strategic advisor, wanted to learn more about our future needs. Anything to do with you? Back then, I was too busy to think much about it, but now, rereading those words, a chill ran down my spine. Viridian Group, a well-known name in the investment world, specializing in acquisitions and restructurings, and strategic customer reviews, were always their first move before a takeover. I quickly reached out to Olivia Mitchell. When I asked if anyone had introduced themselves recently as a strategic partner, she let out a dry laugh over the phone. Yeah, about 3 weeks ago, some guy from Apex Consulting said he was doing market research for Westmore. It felt off, but they claimed it was directed by the CEO. Same tactic, different company name. The picture in my mind grew sharper. I couldn't sit still any longer. I called an old friend, Eric Dawson, an M&A advisor I had helped years ago when he worked at an investment bank. We agreed to meet quickly at a quiet Mexican restaurant where we wouldn't draw attention. It took less than 10 minutes for Eric to nod and confirm my worst suspicions. Daniel, word's been circulating for weeks. Westmore's negotiating to sell to Veritas Capital. But part of the deal requires proving that major revenue doesn't rely on a single individual. You get it, right? If clients are tied to you personally, the deal falls apart. Under the table, my fists clenched. A burning mix of anger and betrayal surged through me. Jason wasn't brought in to revamp the sales division like everyone thought. He was planted to systematically detach me from my clients, to turn the very relationships I had built into company assets, ready for handover. Eric leaned in, lowering his voice. Your firing, Daniel, was a step in the plan. Sever the ties between you and the clients, so Veritas wouldn't worry about people following you out the door. I sat there, stunned. Every strange little incident I had brushed off, the laptop inspection, the office relocation, the pay cuts. Each was another small cut designed to push me out. Westmore is no longer the company I gave my best years to, I thought bitterly. They didn't just betray me. They plotted to erase everything I built so they could cash out. Driving home, my mind raced with overlapping plans. One thing was certain. They might have cut me loose from the office, but they couldn't erase the trust I had earned. That night, I pulled out every client contact, every old contract, every note on individual needs and future goals. I wasn't planning to attack or seek revenge. I was going to do the one thing Westmore had underestimated the most: preserve trust. If they think they can sell these relationships like inventory, I thought, they're in for a brutal surprise. A storm was gathering, and I was standing calmly at its center. Tomorrow, the real work would begin. And this time, I would be the one in full control. Monday morning, I started making the first calls. I wasn't trying to persuade or lure anyone. I simply informed each major client that I was no longer working at Westmore. My message was always short, polite, and completely honest. Hi, Jared. I wanted you to hear it directly from me. I officially left Westmore as of last week. The decision to change personnel was beyond my control. I truly appreciate the time we worked together. If you ever need anything, feel free to reach out to me personally. That was it. I didn't name names, didn't make appeals, didn't play the victim. I let the clients make their own decisions. And just as I had expected, that brief silence carried far more weight than any persuasion could. That afternoon, Jared called back. His voice was sharp, barely concealing his anger. They just sent someone new, a guy named Peter Morley, to meet with us this morning, a 28-year-old kid, talking like he was reading off a marketing brochure. Daniel, do they really think I'm going to entrust $1.8 million in annual revenue to a kid just because he wears a nice suit? I stayed silent, letting Jared vent. Finally, he concluded, We've already sent Westmore a termination notice, citing key personnel changes. I just wanted you to know, wherever you go, we're going with you. Similar messages came from Olivia Mitchell 2 days later, then from Patrick Rivera, then Westgate Hospitality Group, and Solano Technologies. Within less than a week, 5 of Westmore's biggest clients had each submitted termination notices, totaling nearly $4 million in annual revenue. One morning, while drafting a personal business plan, I got a message from Linda, my former assistant at Westmore, who still kept in close contact. Daniel, it's chaos here. Leadership's been in emergency meetings all week. Jason got grilled by the CEO. The deal with Veritas might collapse because they're losing major contracts. I read her message with complete calm. No triumph, no bitterness. Just the clear, undeniable feeling that the truth always finds its way to the surface. That afternoon, Eric Dawson met me at a quiet bar on the edge of downtown. His face was grave. Daniel, Veritas officially pulled out. I just got internal confirmation. No anchor clients, no deal. The risk's too high. I smirked slightly and sipped my beer. Westmore destroyed their own deal because they thought they could replace trust with paperwork. Eric nodded, his eyes lighting up. You didn't just cost them a sale. You're shaking their entire foundation. Trust me, the fallout's just beginning. Sure enough, over the next few days, Westmore's financial reports started leaking. Major banking partners demanded to renegotiate credit terms. Minority shareholders began questioning leadership strategy. A wave of articles from local financial magazines raised alarms about instability within Westmore's executive suite. Westmore was free-falling, and none of them realized it all started the moment Jason slid those termination papers across that cold conference table to me. That evening, sitting in my small home office, I checked my email. A LinkedIn notification flashed across the screen. Brian Jason updated his career status, seeking new opportunities. I leaned back in my chair and exhaled deeply. Jason was finally paying the price for his hasty, short-sighted decisions. I didn't hate him. Honestly, I should thank him. If Jason hadn't come along, I might still be there, grinding away for a company that had long since stopped valuing human relationships. Another message came through, this time from Jared Lawson. Daniel, have you decided where you're landing next? If you need anything, just say the word. I closed my eyes, feeling warmth spread through my chest. In the cold world of finance, the greatest thing I had built wasn't money or contracts. It was trust. Tomorrow, I would answer Jared. And not just him. There were many others waiting for me to map out the next chapter. A chapter where, this time, I would be the one holding the pen. 3 days after my conversation with Jared, I received a call from Nathan Cole, the CEO of Sterling & Pierce Financial, a rapidly growing financial firm in the western U.S. Daniel, I heard you're no longer with Westmore, Nathan began, his voice warm and confident. A few mutual friends suggested we should meet. Within half an hour, I was sitting in a wide, glass-walled office on the 18th floor of Sterling Tower, looking out across Denver's skyline. Nathan didn't waste time. We need someone like you. Someone who doesn't just bring revenue, but builds loyalty. That's rare. I listened silently as Nathan laid out the offer. Senior Vice President of Business Development, full control of strategic client accounts, hiring autonomy, and an attractive equity package in the company. Most importantly, personal respect. Nathan smiled, as if reading my thoughts. We're not hiring you just for contracts. We want to build something long-term with you. It didn't take long for me to decide. I shook his hand, knowing I had just stepped into a brand new chapter of my life. When I officially joined Sterling & Pierce, there were no big announcements, no flashy LinkedIn posts. I simply messaged each key client privately. If you need anything, I'm now available at my new firm. Always happy to support you. The responses came almost instantly. Jared Lawson was the first to schedule a lunch meeting. Right there, over coffee, he said, "We've already signed the transfer to Sterling & Pierce. No hesitation. We work with people, not logos." Olivia Mitchell quickly followed, bringing an entire $2 million urban development project with her. Patrick Rivera wasn't far behind. He even pulled along several satellite partners from his food chain business. Within 3 months, nearly 70% of my former clients had moved over to Sterling & Pierce, bringing with them over $6 million in new contracts. The executive team at my new company could hardly believe the speed of the transition. Every week I received updated revenue reports, each one surpassing projections. 6 whirlwind months passed. My team doubled in size. I personally recruited young talent, not just skilled sellers but relationship builders. When Sterling & Pierce released its quarterly report, the headline number made the entire regional finance industry buzz. $8.4 million in new revenue in under half a year, most of it from my directly managed portfolio. One afternoon, during a strategy session with Nathan, he clapped me on the shoulder, eyes full of trust. "Daniel, you didn't just bring in revenue, you brought something priceless." Trust. I only smiled, saying nothing. Because deep down I knew that this time, every ounce of my hard work and sacrifice had finally landed exactly where it belonged. But what satisfied me most wasn't the numbers, the title, or the applause. It was the simple fact that for the first time in nearly a decade, I had built something truly mine, something that couldn't be taken away with the swipe of a pen. That night, standing on the balcony of my new office, looking over the sparkling lights of Denver, I whispered to myself, "We only truly lose when we lose trust. As long as trust remains, every new door will open." And this time, I wasn't just opening doors. I was stepping straight through them, carrying with me the trust I had spent a lifetime building. About 8 months after officially joining Sterling and Pierce, a special invitation popped up in my personal inbox. The annual Midwest Financial Conference. The largest event of the year in our industry, gathering hundreds of CEOs, investors, and finance professionals from all over. The organizer's message was direct. We would like to invite Mr. Daniel Thompson to be the keynote speaker for the panel discussion on building and maintaining client trust in a volatile financial environment. I sat silently in front of the screen for a long moment. This was the same conference Westmore had once poured so much effort into every year, with glossy booths and overrehearsed presentations, always focused on numbers and empty slogans. And now, I, the one they had cast aside, was being invited to stand on the industry's biggest stage. I didn't accept immediately. Instead, I spent 3 nights thinking, drafting, and weighing every word I would say. I didn't want my speech to be about bitterness or blame. I wanted it to be a lesson no one in that room would forget. On the day of the conference, I wore a simple suit and stepped into the Intercontinental Hotel, bright lights and a lively atmosphere buzzing around me. My name flashed on the digital board, Daniel Thompson, Senior Vice President of Business Development, Sterling and Pierce Financial. As I stepped onto the stage, the spotlight blurred out the sea of faces below. But I still spotted a few familiar ones. Nathan Cole, Jared Lawson, and, tucked away in a shadowed corner, Peter Matthews, former CEO of Westmore. I took the mic, voice steady. We are living in a time where financial technology is advancing faster than ever. Data analytics, automation, AI, all of these are reshaping how we work. But one thing hasn't changed, and it never will: personal trust. The room fell into complete silence. I told my story without naming Westmore, without mentioning Jason, but everyone understood the implication. I spoke about how clients don't sign contracts with buildings or logos, they sign with the people they trust, and how companies that lose sight of that will pay a price far steeper than any financial crisis. Then, I presented the hard numbers. After moving to Sterling and Pierce, 82% of my former clients continued working with me within the first 3 months. Client response times were cut by an average of 47%. Operating costs for clients dropped by 28% thanks to more flexible processes. Most importantly, client satisfaction scores rose by 24% within just 6 months of working with the new team. I closed my speech slowly, clearly. We can invest in technology, marketing strategies, and sales teams. But if we forget the most fundamental element, human relationships, all those investments are nothing more than castles built on sand. The applause started scattered, then quickly erupted into a standing ovation. I bowed slightly and walked off the stage, feeling as if an invisible burden had finally lifted from my shoulders. As I stepped into the hallway, Jared caught up with me and clapped me hard on the back. That was the best speech I've ever heard in this industry. Honest, practical, no fluff. Nathan came over too, pride shining in his eyes. We didn't just bring clients over, Daniel. We just showed the entire industry that putting people first, that's the real future of business. That evening, sitting alone in my new downtown apartment, I stared out at the golden rows of streetlights, stretching into the distance. My phone buzzed non-stop with partnership offers, interview requests, congratulations, but I didn't rush to answer, because I knew success isn't measured by how much praise you receive today. True success is shown tomorrow, by staying true to your principles, no matter how the world changes. Just 3 weeks after the conference, the first news started leaking from Westmore. Their latest quarterly financial report showed a steep drop. Revenue down nearly 40%, compared to the same period the previous year. Major contracts had disappeared almost overnight. Jared Lawson, Olivia Mitchell, Patrick Rivera, and many other familiar names were gone. Immediately, Westmore's stock on the New York Exchange went into freefall. Within less than 2 weeks, the company's market value had evaporated by nearly $60 million. Investors panicked. Financial analysts unleashed scathing critiques. Complacency, strategic blunders, reckless personnel changes, harsh phrases splashed across every headline. One Wednesday afternoon, while meeting with Sterling and Pierce's strategy team, I got a message from Linda, my old assistant. Daniel, internal news, Peter Matthews has resigned. The board asked him to step down immediately. I wasn't surprised. Peter had long since become obsessed with surface-level growth numbers, forgetting the only thing that truly retained clients: human connection. But it didn't stop there. The next day, another message from Linda. Brian Ellsworth was fired this morning, officially blamed for poor management and loss of client trust. I closed my phone and leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling, feeling a strange wave of emotion. Not triumph, but deep sadness. Peter had once been the man who believed in me, who had given me my biggest opportunity. Even if power had clouded his judgment in the end, I couldn't deny the good he had once done for Westmore. As for Brian, he was just another pawn in a much bigger game. That evening, financial news outlets exploded. Westmore Financial faces unprecedented crisis. CEO resigns. VP of Sales fired. Stock plummets. A deeper analysis pointed to the real root cause: the breakdown of client trust after the mishandling of key personnel, triggering a domino effect of contract cancellations. That's how finance works. You can survive a bad quarter or even a bad year, but losing trust is a wound most companies never recover from. The following day, Nathan Cole called me into his office. He placed a thick envelope on the desk in front of me, his smile full of meaning. "Daniel, here's your contract upgrade. Your equity stake is doubling, along with a special bonus for the tremendous growth you've brought to Sterling and Pierce." I opened the envelope, skimming the numbers, feeling a deep surge of emotion. This wasn't just a reward for my work. It was recognition of the values I had fought to protect. The same values Westmore had once had, and then lost. Nathan leaned forward, voice firm and steady. "We know why clients come, Daniel Thompson, and we know why they stay, because of how Daniel Thompson does business. We don't just want to keep you. We want to build a legacy with you." I nodded, quietly thanking the bitter losses that had led me to this moment. That night, while driving home, I passed by Westmore's old headquarters. The once bright sign was now dusty, and only a few dim lights flickered inside. A small crew of workers was dismantling the large exterior signage, preparing the building for a temporary office rental company. I stopped the car for a moment, simply watching, like closing a long chapter of my life. Westmore didn't collapse because of the market, not because of competition, not because of economic downturns. They destroyed themselves by forgetting a simple truth. Loyalty can't be bought with contracts. It has to be built with time, trust, and genuine care. I started the engine and drove away, feeling lighter than I had in years. Ahead of me lay a new journey, one where everything I built would truly belong to me. One crisp fall morning in Denver, I walked into Sterling and Pierce's offices with a sense of peace I hadn't felt in years. In my hand was the new contract Nathan Cole had handed me the night before. I was now officially a senior partner in the firm. No longer just an employee. No longer building value for someone else. From that moment forward, everything I built would also be mine. The signing ceremony was simple but meaningful. Nathan shook my hand firmly in front of the entire leadership team. The nods, the handshakes, the sincere congratulations, all of it made me realize something profound. For the first time in my life, I was being recognized not just for the numbers I delivered, but for the values I had never once compromised. After the ceremony, as I returned to my new office, a corner room overlooking the entire downtown, the phone rang. An unfamiliar number flashed on the screen. I picked up, and a low, familiar voice spoke. "Daniel, it's Peter. I know this might not be the best time, but I was wondering if you'd agree to meet me for coffee?" I stayed silent for a few seconds. The man who once signed my termination papers, who allowed everything I had built to be trampled, was now asking to meet? Not to justify himself, I was sure of that, not to make amends. Simply to close the past. "This afternoon, the roastery on 7th Street, I replied shortly. 3 o'clock. When I arrived, Peter was already there, seated at a corner table by the window, He looked noticeably older, more silver in his hair, his shoulders weighed down. The cup in front of him was half-finished black coffee. I sat down calmly. Peter looked up, exhaustion clear in his eyes. "Daniel," he began, voice hoarse, "I owe you an apology, not just for how we treated you, but for forgetting what really matters." I said nothing, simply listened. He sighed, clasping his hands tightly. "I was too ambitious. I thought I could separate you from the clients and the company would keep the success. But it turns out what you built couldn't be bought or replaced." A heavy silence hung between us. Finally I spoke, slowly. "Peter, I'm not angry. Honestly. If none of this had happened, I might still be sitting in a different office today, building someone else's dream instead of my own." He looked at me, eyes red. "I don't expect your forgiveness. I just hope that someday, when you think of Westmore, you'll remember the early days, when we still believed in the right things." I nodded. "That's the part I'll always cherish." We sat quietly for a while longer, then shook hands. Not to reconnect the past, but to release it. That evening, I returned home where Rebecca, my wife, was preparing dinner. The small kitchen glowed warmly, the scent of toasted bread filling the air. I wrapped my arms around her from behind and held her close. "What's wrong, honey?" Rebecca asked, smiling as she turned toward me. I shook my head. "Nothing. Just feeling really grateful." We had dinner together, chatting about plans for our upcoming vacation. For the first time in years, I wasn't haunted by urgent contracts, midnight calls, or the fear of an unstable seat. That night, standing on the balcony, gazing out at the glittering city lights, I realized something simple yet profound. True success isn't about retaliating against those who doubted you. It isn't about proving who is right or wrong. It's about building something that no one can take away: trust, value, and true freedom. I smiled softly into the darkness, feeling the cold breeze on my face. The road ahead was still long, but this time, I was walking it without the weight of the past. Only trust in myself remained, and a future wide open before me. Daniel's story is a vivid reminder that in both business and life, the most enduring values aren't found in numbers or titles, but in trust and genuine relationships. True success isn't loud revenge. It's patiently building something meaningful, lasting, and untouchable. In a world that changes at breakneck speed, dignity, integrity, and personal trust remain the strongest foundation for any journey to success. What are your thoughts on Daniel's journey and the lessons he shared? Feel free to leave your comments below. And don't forget to follow the channel to discover more inspiring stories about life and family in future videos.